All right, here we go. We got another piece that we're going to flip and redo. This one, whew, it's pretty dirty. All right, so it's going to be a lot of work. We're going to go through this process with you, see this thing transform. So our customer dropped this off. We've done several pieces for them, and they want this thing to be painted black. They kind of asked, hey, can we stain it? We can. It is solid wood. It's just pine, so they decided to go ahead and go with the paint. But this thing has had layers and layers of paint on it, and it looks like someone tried to strip it. So they put stripper on it, and I think like halfway through doing it, they were like, forget this, too much work, I don't want to do it. The good news is with this piece, we are going to paint it, so as long as we get everything super smooth, I think we're going to be just fine. But sometimes in these situations, I end up getting everything down to bare wood because the stripper just builds up this like gloopy paint and stuff. That's even a word, gloopy. Go ahead and quote me on that one, I guess. But it's just kind of like, we got to make this thing look brand new again. So we'll see what happens. Go along with the journey. We're going to kind of start sanding on this thing and see what happens. Are we going to get it smooth to paint, or are we going to take everything down to bare wood? So go along with the journey with us. All right, so the first thing I really want to do here is let's get these hinges off because they got paint all over them. It's just not going to look good if we leave them like this goofy white. So a couple things. If you ever see these antique screwdrivers, these things are awesome because they get antique screws out. So it's super awesome to have these around. But I've kind of moved it to my power drill. So if you got a power drill, I love these little mini ones here from Bosch. So I'll usually get all my little ones like this out and try to find one that kind of fits inside the screw head. And if it fits in there really good, then that's the one that you want to work with. For some reason why America decided that they would make 500,000 different screw heads. And that just kind of makes it difficult. It's like, why do we have so many different screws? So we're going to take these things off because it's just going to make our process easier. Also, this is a customer's piece. And these hinges going up and down, we might break the piece of wood. We don't want to do that. So I'll finish getting these off, and then we're going to go in and see how this stuff right here comes off. This is some really hardened stripper on some paint. So we're going to get the sander out and see how easy this comes off, and we'll determine what we need to do next. All right, so once you get all those hinges and screws off, go ahead and throw them in a bag and keep them like that. That way you don't lose any. And then let's see how this thing sands. So I have the DeWalt Random Orbit Sander here. I'm going to start with an 80 grit. So we'll go ahead and put this on and let's see what happens. All right, so I feel like, hey, this is a pretty good job. It's pretty smooth. So I'll probably do some 180 all over the piece. I'll come in with the 120 after that, go to a 150, and that's where I'm going to stop. Then I'll work through the grooves and stuff of my little piece, and then we'll probably paint. So I'll go show you how I sand the rest of this piece. All right, so looking at this, we pretty much got a pretty flat piece. So the Random Orbit Sander is going to do a pretty good job getting in everything. On here are my edges. I'm probably going to go ahead and use my oscillating tool and kind of come in here and work that out. If you don't have an oscillating tool, you can always get some sandpaper and you can wrap around a sanding block and you can use that in that area. Also, if you have your painter's tool, you can also use it and you can typically scrape up and down in there, and that'll help get things level. But I think sandpaper, this is obviously the stripper has been on here a really long time, so it's pretty hardened, so it's going to come off pretty easy. I think everything is going to pretty much sand up pretty easily. We do have this little handle area right here, so I'm going to take a carpenter's pencil, or essentially if you can find anything that can fit inside of there, I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to roll it up. And this is 100 grit sandpaper because it's what I got laying around. And then I'm going to fill it. If it feels pretty smooth, and it looks pretty smooth, then, well, it is smooth. And when we go to paint that, it's going to come out looking brand new. So one thing about when you paint these old things, what we're really looking at is we're trying to just get everything to be very smooth. So sanding down to getting everything to be one level, and sometimes you have to use some wood filler if you have like any nicks or dings, things like that. And then you're good to prime and then paint. Typically, once you prime this, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, when you go to prime it, if you see like any indentions or anything like that that doesn't come out smooth, you'll have the opportunity to fix it before you go into paint. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing all smoothed out with my sanders, and then we're going to move on to the primer section. Well, we have run into a little problem. So I'm sanding and the stripper is just reactivating and it's ruining my sandpaper. And I really don't want to go through $80 worth of sandpaper. So we're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to try the carbide scraper method and see if this helps. I really don't like putting chemical strippers on wood. So I try to do everything I can to not have to do that. But sometimes we don't have a choice. So let's see how the scraper does. All right, I'm actually pretty pleased with that. So the carbide scraper got most of the chunky stuff off. It feels pretty smooth. I think now I can probably just come in with my 150 grit sandpaper and sand this pretty smooth before I put a primer on it. If I was going to have to stain this piece, I definitely think I'd go buy the chemical stripper, strip off as much of this paint as possible, and then go through my sanding grits from there and go in the stain. But hey, we're lucky this round. We're going to have to paint this thing. So I'll get this thing nice and smooth, and then we're going to go ahead and show you which primer we use and how we get that done. All right, so I've finished carbide scraping. It's been a good 45 minutes of hard sweat, and this is what we got down to. So I pretty much got all the chunky paint off with the carbide scraper. I even kind of used it here in like the grooves and stuff. The carbide scraper pretty much got everything off of here, so I was pretty happy with that. On these little flip tops that I have on here, they're kind of like, I don't know if you can see it from here, but they're kind of bowed a little bit. And so I couldn't run the carbide scraper lengthwise. I had to go this way, which is against the wood grain, which I don't like doing. You're not supposed to do that. I did a little bit because I was like, hey, you know what? Why not, right? Let's just see what happens. So I was able to get some of the paint off. As you can see, I didn't get a whole lot off because I didn't want to really dig into the wood too hard. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 150 grit sandpaper, my random orbit sander, and my oscillating sander, and I'm going to go ahead and just 150 the entire piece. I may go up to 180 as well. I don't know yet. I'll see what 150 kind of feels like. But I'll put 150 all over this. It's pine. It doesn't really suck a whole lot in, so I'm not too worried if I go to 150. The grain should be closed off enough so that it doesn't suck in too much of my primer. My primer can kind of sit on top and seal, so that's why I may not go to 180. But I'm going to go ahead and get this thing nice and smooth and making it look brand new. It'll probably still have a little bit of paint on here, but it'll definitely look lighter than what it does now. And then when I come back, we're going to be ready to prime, and you're going to see what this thing looks like after I sanded it. So let's go ahead and get into the stage of primering this piece. All right, so I've got this piece of pine box here. It's like a magazine rack almost. Sanded up to a 150 grit. Got everything smoothed out. It is ready to start going through the primer process. So in our company, we're in our garage studio instead of our business studio, but the HVLP gun is usually what we would use to primer this. But since this video is for people who are wanting to work in their garage, which is what I'm doing, we're going to go old school. So back before we made this a full-fledged business, we would do this all by hand. And over the years, I've been searching for some primers, and I really do like this one right here. This is, you can get this at Lowe's. It's the HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams. It's a cabinet door and trim primer. So it goes on really, really well when you spray it. It is a slower drying product, so we're going to be just fine here brushing. But this primer is going to seal the wood grains. It's going to help stop any bleed throughs that might occur, and also give us a nice foundation for us to go with our paint job. Now, to be honest with you, in my experience, because this customer wants this black, I could actually just go to my cabinet paint that I use, and I would actually typically just go ahead and put my cabinet paint in black on this piece. I was sand that smooth, put another coat, sand it smooth, and the paint job is actually done at that point. I use a really high-end product. I'll probably show it to you in a different video someday. But for this video, we're doing this as if we're just trying to make this thing, you know, we're just trying to flip a piece in our garage. We've never done this before. So I recommend getting this product right here. My favorite brush to use for hand painting is the 2-inch angled brush by Zebra. It really does help make a smooth finish. I also will have an artist brush as well to try to get into little corners and stuff like that. I usually like to paint my corners first, and then I'll do my big areas with this brush. And then once you have that primer on there and you let it dry for a couple hours and it doesn't feel tacky anymore, you can smooth sand it up, which I'll probably show you in another video what sandpaper I like to use in between my primer, paint, and clear coat finishes whenever I go to do a piece. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting this primed up. For the next step. So before I ever go forward into painting from this point, I like to get these little pads right here, little sanding pads. They come in different grits. I usually like to use the 220 grit or a 150. I think this was the 150. Yeah, it's brown, so this is 150. And so I want to make sure that my surfaces are smooth. You can usually do this by feeling around. If I feel here in the bottom, it feels pretty good. I feel a couple of like little kind of grainy things. Maybe something got in my brush when I was brushing on. But right here, I actually have quite a few brush strokes, and I want to kind of sand those out. So I'm going to take this sanding pad, and I'm just going to kind of work around. And that's very smooth. I can feel it. The edges, probably still a little too rough. There we go, that feels better. In this area right here, I got it all the way down to bare wood, and that grain raised. I'm sure it did right here too. I want to take that. We're just going to hit that up a little bit. Same thing. So I want to do a nice one over the entire piece with this. Get it nice and smooth. When you do this, why you're like, wow, it feels so good. And that's how you're going to get that smooth paint finish. Typically, like I said, I would have sprayed this primer with my HELP system when we do, because it's just so much faster. It gives a great finish, but we understand not everyone has a spray system at home. So in my paints, If you're using a paint sprayer, I recommend this from Benjamin Moore. This is a high-grade superior paint. It's a waterborne acrylic urethane, so it's got like a water oil mix within it, but you can clean this with water and soap. So this is a great option. You don't have to use like mineral spirits or thinning agents to be able to work with this. So I really like this. We've been using it for years. Never have had a complaint. Is it a little toxic? Yes. When we spray this, and I only recommend spraying this, is very difficult to apply by hand because it dries super fast. And honestly, it's kind of thin whenever you do it by hand. If you spray it, it goes on like just perfect. But we definitely we have our spray system at our shop. We have the mask and everything that we're doing. On this particular project though, I did have a request from the customer. They wanted a safer, no VOC option. And so I went and got me some of this. This is DIY paint. It's a clay-based mineral paint. I've been using this stuff before I ever used the other stuff I ever showed you. This is literally how I learned how to paint furniture. This is back to my foundations. So in this video, this is our love right here. So it's a nice thick paint. If you wanted to spray this, you can do it. We've done it. I swear it's like 1 part paint, 1 part water, because this stuff is super thick. I love it. But we have been able to spray this before. It's got a very earthy smell. I mean, it literally feels like just a layer of clay is on your piece of furniture. And when you go to sand that smooth, I mean, it feels so good. You do have to make sure you get a clear coat with this. So you can either put a wax on it or you can put a hard clear coat. I recommend water-based polyurethanes. I do not like polyacrylics. I think they're sticky and tacky. I've used them a lot, but I went away from that. I think the water-based polyurethane has a harder casing on it, and it just goes on a lot better for us, and that's what we like. So that's what I recommend. I will show you the brand that I use for water-based polyurethane. And give my recommendations. But for this project, we're using this paint right here. If you have a chalk-based paint, doesn't really matter what the brand, find the one that you like. They work really well because you can use water with it. And the water will help you thin it down, and it will help give you smoother coats so you don't have to do so much sanding out of the brush strokes. So that's our next step with this. So I'm gonna go ahead and smooth sand this thing up, and I'll be back just to show you guys how we're going to apply this paint. And once we have this thing painted, we're gonna come back and talk about how we're gonna finish this up with a clear coat so that we can protect it for another generation. And if you like this video, make sure you actually like it. Go ahead and click and like it because it really helps promote this out to other people. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so because we got a lot more content coming. We'll try to link any videos that are related to this in the description, or we'll have it pop up at the end. But my wife and I, Whitney, I'm Corey, and of course my wife Whitney, we're with Layers Grace Designs. We've been running this company for a lot of years, and we love to help people learn how to do this themselves. We started in our garage. Now we have a full-fledged business. We have our own shops and everything, and so this is how we started, and we believe that people can have great looking furniture and they can give furniture a second generation. And so you want to put pieces in your house, that's awesome. If you want to know how to do this and make some side cash or a hustle, if you want to make it a full-fledged business, we've got a lot of resources. Just reach out to us. You can also go to our website, layersgracedesigns.com. We'll have our courses, digital downloads, all those things that'll help you along your way and your journey. So I'm gonna go back to basics for me and my foundations, and I'm gonna go put some paint on this piece. All right, let's go to the next video. All right, so we're ready to paint this piece. So I've taken my shop vac and I vacuumed all the dust off this piece. If you don't have a vacuum to get your piece off, you can get like a brush, dust as much off as you want to, or you can get a paper towel and just kind of go through your piece and it'll pick up most of the particles. With it being a primer coming off, I don't think it'd be that big of a deal. So the supplies I'm going to use to paint are fairly similar to what I used for the primer. So I'm using the same 2 brushes that I had. And then of course I have my clay paint. You can have a chalk paint, whatever you want to use. If you're using the chalk and clay based paints, I like to use a spray bottle along with this so that I can water my paint down as I go. Some people like to pour some of the paint out into a container and then add some water and stir that up. Whichever method you find that works best for you. For me, I like to add the paint and then spray the water on and kind of thin as I go. Also, um, when you're doing this, like it can get real sloppy. So I have a couple of recommendations. I typically like to go in with the smaller brush and hit all of like the little corners and the crevices. So anywhere where like two pieces kind of meet each other, I like to go and just kind of put a layer of paint in all those corners first. Once you start on one area and you work your way, you go around the entire piece, typically the paint will be dry when you get back to there. And then your large surface areas like these, and these, I'll usually do those second, and I will use the bigger brush with that. We're probably going to end up doing at least 2 coats. So your first coat, we're just trying to get some nice coverage. Remember, we're probably going to sand in between that before we add another coat where hopefully we get full coverage. So go ahead and stay tuned, and I'll show you a little bit of painting. All right, we're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and dab in some paint, and we're going to start working into our corner areas. So I really like this paint because it has great coverage. Whenever I have to hand paint, I'm just going to be honest, I don't really want to do a lot of coats because it takes up a lot of time. But so I like the clay and the chalk paints because they have better coverages than your cabinet coat paints that you can buy at the hardware store or your specialty paint store like Benjamin Moore or Sherwin-Williams. So as you can tell, this is going on just like awesome. So, I mean, I'm pretty much got full coverage right here, which is what I want. I think when this dries a little bit, it will probably not look as coated, usually, from my experience. At this point, I'm not adding any water at all. I usually don't do that in my corner areas because you really want to make sure you get a nice coat in there. And so you're using straight paint and nothing thinned out with water. You also usually don't have to deal as much with, you know, your brush strokes and stuff like that. You do have to be kind of careful because the paint dries fairly fast. I am working here in the summer in the south, and so I'm in the garage and it's drying super fast. But if you're working in your garage, you're dealing with the same problem. So the best bet is to make sure that you don't go back over an area that you just painted because you're going to get brush strokes and you'll end up having to sand those out. And it's just really not a lot of fun. So any of these little small areas that my big brush is going to just kind of have a problem getting to, I want to go ahead and hit that up with my small brush here. And then I also want to go to the wraparound. Oh, a little drop of paint in there. I want to go ahead and, so I dropped some paint down in here. You can't see it, but I want to go ahead and make sure I smooth that out before it becomes like, you know, a solid drip that's dried on there, because that wouldn't be any fun, right? So again, I'm going to go ahead and finish up all my little small tight areas with my small brush. And then, you know, I'll come in with the big brush and I'll do a large area and show you how that looks. And all right, so we're going to start painting with this. If you're using a chalk or a clay-based paint, make sure you have some water with you. It helps thin out that thick paint to kind of get you a nice smooth coverage. I'm going to kind of pre-spray my piece here with just a little bit of water before I jump in, and my brush is also very wet. And I'm going to come in and start applying my paint. I really don't want my bristles bending too much because the more they bend, the more likely I'm going to have brush strokes. Now, since I'm doing this outside of my garage, and of course it's the summer, this is going to dry fairly fast on me. So the reason why this is a great brush or a great option for painting by hand is because you can keep applying water to keep it activated so you get it smooth. I'm just kind of going through here right now to make sure that I get my brush strokes out. And I'll grab some more paint, come in here and get this area, and woo, it's thick. So let me just kind of spray some water. So as you can see, when I use this paint, you can apply the water after the paint or before the paint. It's just really whatever your preference is. I do both because honestly, sometimes I just forget to apply it beforehand. Let's just be honest. I get into the groove of painting and having the fun. All right, so going back through. Now I'm going to go ahead and just spritz the whole thing over. And I want to just come back through and just kind of make sure that I get this all smoothed out. I really want to eliminate as many brush strokes as possible, allow this paint to settle in. And of course, I've got some paint that's running on the side. And my daughter, who's running the camera, just notified me. And I'm going to come through here and I'm going to just clean that up. because we don't want those runs. That would not be a professional looking piece. And we're going to put those through here. And, oh, I'm runless. That's it. So we're going to go ahead and finish this thing up. And once we have it done, we're going to talk about clear coats and protective finishes. I'm going to tell you what I did to clear coat it. So what I did to finish this piece up after I painted it was, one, I took this gold spray paint and I painted my hinges, and I also painted my hardware that's going to go in these holes. I forgot my customer did not actually have hardware with these, so when I went to go do the rest of this video, I actually realized I didn't have hardware. So I had to pull out 2 old hardware pieces that I pull off another piece of furniture, who knows, 10 years ago, and I'm using those to put on here. So if you ever get old hardware, guess what? Save it, because you might actually need it handy. And I actually have them sitting here, but these are wet and I can't touch them. And I also haven't sprayed my enamel on them. So whenever I do my metal hardware, after I do my spray paint, I also like to get a clear enamel for the metals. I don't typically use this on the furniture or the wood. It's okay if you want to, it's just not my preference. And I will tell you my preference and what I did with this piece. But you can totally clear coat an entire piece of furniture with this, whether it's wood or paint. You'll be just fine. This stuff is awesome. It's super hardy. I especially like it for my metals. So after I use the spray paint, even though this has a built-in clear coat with it, I don't trust it. I go the extra step. I put enamel. So I put the enamel that's clear on this in a satin, and that's where I have these on. I'll go ahead and put these off to the side because I don't want to mess them up during the video. So I'll put them down over here. And of course, I'm back. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our hinges back on our piece here and get that. We'll put our hardware on. But the way that I finish this piece is I have a really high-end spray system. So I put this Old Masters water-based polyurethane. I love this stuff. It's super, super hardy. It dries super fast. So if you're spraying this in a spray system, it's awesome. You can go through and you can spray the whole thing. We have lots of videos on our social medias showing you guys where we're using this product. We'll even try to do a YouTube video, and you guys can go look at that and how we finish all of our furniture. But in every video, I always try to tell you how I finish, or like what I actually finish my products with. But we'll eventually do a video that will show you how we use these products. If you want to use a wax, you can. I would say get a dark wax or a black wax if you can find one. Black waxes are hard to come by, but if you want to use a wax, you can totally do that. Again, the enamel, that's an option. You can use oil-based polyurethane. This is wipe-on poly. You can do this on black. It actually makes black look really, really good. Some other options that you can get spray lacquer. Lacquer is a great finish on black, and you can get it in a high gloss, you can get it in a semi-gloss, or even a satin finish. So if you don't want it super shiny like most lacquers are, that's okay. You can find a more diminished finish if you like. So that's kind of the options you have for clear coat. I just say find what's easily available and what you feel comfortable using, and make sure you clear coat your piece. Every piece of furniture that we do, we always put something in addition to it to protect it. When you don't do that, you really do all the kind of the hard sweat and all the grit that you kind of put into restoring a piece. You kind of lose that value when you don't actually put a nice hard coat finish on it. So I always recommend that you do it. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing put back together, and we're going to do a little video loop and show you guys what this thing looks like at the end. But before we go, I want to ask you, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you know when we launch another video. We're all about teaching people how to flip furniture, how to restore furniture, how to make furniture beautiful again. So make sure you follow along with this. Also, like the video if you liked it. If you didn't like the video, just find another video. It's that easy. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. We'd love to answer any questions that you have or anything you have to say about this project. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.